The first Last of Us is one of the most beloved games ever. It's a game that I hadn't played until recently when I got curious and sat my ass down to see why people are so passionate about this game. And after playing it, I want to take a deep dive into the story. And that means massive spoilers for the story, so if you don't want to get spoilers, then skedaddle. Get out of here before it's too late. This is also the PS4 remastered version because I think it's about time to dive into the story. Let's do it. One of my favorite parts about the first Last of Us is how realistic it is. Not like the graphics or anything, but what happens in the story almost feels random, which is a lot more realistic than other stories. Most stories have a set path of what will happen. Maybe this good guy wants this bad guy to not have a good time, so he goes on a journey to defeat said bad guy. The bad guy fights back, and the story starts to become predictable, especially since you know they'll fight in the end. But with The Last of Us, fights and big story beats only happen when they need to. There's a part where Joel drives for a good amount of time, which could have easily been turned into, "Oh god, the car is out of gas and there's an army of zombies chasing us now." It makes the game feel so much more immersive and grounded when it doesn't have these big random scenes. And it's even more impressive when you factor in that there are essentially no boss fights in this game. Aside from the bloaters, which are more like mini bosses, there aren't really any boss fights. So the devs really needed to nail the individual characters and enemies for this game to work, and I am happy to say that they fucking did. Joel and Ellie's relationship is the obvious one. Then there's also characters like Henry and Sam, who don't survive for very long, or Tess, who has the exact same problem, and it makes you as the player appreciate those characters' time more because they only live for so long. I feel like another game would have taken the easy route of giving Tess or Sam plot armor and having the zombies not bite them, but the game doesn't do that. The game wants you to know that these characters aren't invincible, and things feel so much more important because of that. And this lack of invincibility affects the main characters too. Close to the end of the game, there's a part where a complete nobody makes Joel fall and he gets impaled because of it. You have this really tense section where you, as the player, are realizing, holy shit, Joel just got impaled. The entire game you've been getting shot by enemies and all you need to do is hold the R2 button to heal with a medkit. But this it can't get patched up like that, and you can't do your rinse and repeat process of get into cover, shoot, and occasionally heal. You have to rely on Ellie now. And as you get out of the lab, Joel gets on his horse, falls off his horse, and Ellie says this.
You gotta tell me what to do. Come on. You gotta get out. Joel?
The screen fades to black, and you're in this weird limbo, wondering if Joel actually died. But no, there's no way he'd die. I mean, he's the main character, and you'd be right. He doesn't die. But the path to get Joel back alive is so amazing and intense, and it works so well because it's so real and grounded. It makes sense that something like this would eventually happen to Joel, and it makes even more sense that it took Ellie a long time to save him. There's no magical antidote here, and it's gonna take Ellie a long time to get Joel back up, and I fucking love it. What follows is by far my favorite part of the game. It starts off with a cute rabbit. That thing fucking dies. Ellie sees a deer and wants to kill it too. And eventually it ends up collapsing right where these two guys are. One guy is just kind of there, but the other one is named David. Which, by the way, did you know that David is voiced by Nolan North, who voiced Nathan Drake? I just find that really cool. Anyway, David is here, and him and Ellie end up fighting off a group of infected. You start to trust David because he does cool stuff like punch infected and gives you a pat on the shoulder, and it makes you start to think, this guy is cool. But when you come back to the fire, David explains to you that there was a crazy man with a little girl that killed a lot of his group, which would be Joel and Ellie when they were fending off against the guys at the lab. And Joel falls and falls again. You get it. But David doesn't kill Ellie. He lets her go even with the medicine, and you start to get this weird feeling that he might be manipulating Ellie into joining his group, trying to build her trust and trying to make sure that, well, I mean, she's alone. Ellie is extremely vulnerable here, and David can pretty much manipulate her as much as he wants. David's insanity is telling him that this kindness might actually stick with her eventually, and then he can have an extremely skilled killer with him. But David's group are not going to go down without a fight, and they end up tracking you down. And it's David that ends up saving you, massive air quotes there, and now they're revealed to be cannibals. And up to this point, I love this section, and one of the biggest parts is because it feels real. Not only is it a great combat section, but it's also something that could have easily been flipped over on its head. The impact of the entire section is enormous because it's fucking horrifying. You're this 14-year-old girl about to be chopped into
tiny pieces,
and Joel isn't here to save you. It makes sense why Ellie might start to cave in, but she doesn't, because Joel unintentionally taught her not to trust anyone. Even when David gives her some food, she doesn't cave until she realizes that he's trying to be as nice to her as possible, and that's actually deer meat. So Ellie naturally says thanks for the deer meat. David finally realizes she's not joining them, and then she says this badass line.
Ellie,
what?
tell him that Ellie is the little girl that broke your fucking finger.
Now Joel's awake. When he comes back to save her, you get to see just how determined he is to find Ellie. The first thing that he says when he wakes up is, "Ellie?" And immediately you're going after her, which works so well because he tried as hard as he could to get to Ellie. But Ellie does everything herself. She gets out of David's fun room. She fights a shit ton of guys off with only a knife. And the cherry on top is the David boss fight. Now I've said it already, but up to this point in the game, you pretty much haven't had a single fight that I'd classify as a boss fight. There have been tough fights, but never something that really had the same feeling of a boss fight. So when David comes in here with his revolver and his butcher knife while the building is on fire, a couple things come to mind, and some of those thoughts are, Joel, come help me, where the fuck are you? There's an insane man creeping up on my ass, help! But Joel never makes it in time. Ellie beats David all by herself, and it makes you realize a lot of things. The main thing I realized is, holy shit, Ellie never needed Joel for this. She got out of this all on her own, and so you'd think that would leave a major impact on her mental health, which it does. After demolishing David's face, we cut all the way to Spring, and Ellie is extremely quiet and distant now. She's not the same, and it makes you realize how real and unforgiving the world is, and it makes the story so much better. And then we have Tess, Henry, and Sam. Tess plays a pretty big role in the beginning. She's a companion with Joel, and she's one of the biggest reasons that Joel even agrees to take Ellie to the Fireflies in the first place. But she ends up dying because an infected bit her, and not like a big infected either, just a normal, common infected. It's the exact same thing with Sam, and it's a great way for the game to show you how fragile everyone is. And the story feeling so real is because of one main thing. I feel like it's really hard to get people to genuinely care about characters. Whether it be video games, movies, shows, fan fiction, you name it. Especially when it comes to side characters because they don't get as much screen time. But The Last of Us gets me to genuinely care what happens to Joel and Ellie. They're two random people that end up meeting and both don't want to stay with each other. But after spending more time together, they start to care more and more about each other. Ellie can connect with Joel because he's like a father figure to her. And that relationship with her and Joel works so well because of Sarah's death in the beginning of the game. But Joel just wants to get done with the mission of taking Ellie to the Fireflies, and that collapses on itself when Ellie runs away. So when Joel gets to the house that she's in, he's just confused. But Ellie lays out exactly why she's upset, since she can see straight through him and understands that he wants to just get rid of her. And during this, you as the player can start to realize little things about them, like how this is Ellie's way of saying if she's not with Joel, then she feels alone, or how Joel starts to realize that this is wrong and his voice stutters.
I got two walking.
It's one of my favorite scenes in the entire game just because of the raw wound that was peeled off. And it leads right into the cannibal section, which shows just how fucked up Joel's decision to keep Ellie could get, even though it was the right decision. Now this is just Joel and Ellie as characters. The side characters in the game, Tess, Henry, Sam, and Bill, are all great too, which might be partially because they actually feel like people who have their own problems instead of just tacked on characters. Bill is a great first example. He's a guy that has become so distant from everyone, which is shown by the amount of traps he has set up everywhere, and since he's so hostile, he could have easily been an extremely unlikable character. But instead he ends up feeling like a drunk uncle, which is even more incredible because I don't think many people would like that either, but I do. Maybe it's Bill's voice actor or how expressive he is, but Bill just works. He's a character that seems to hate everything, which is shown right away when he handcuffs Ellie. Bill's expressions are so memorable and intense, and I love them. The
"Let's get on with it"
is classic, or
and "get the fuck out of my town."
It's so good. He's very overprotective, and the back and forth he has with Ellie is great. They're both always angry with each other, until the end when the car is fixed, which is a nice touch. Now let's talk about Tess. Tess starts out as a character that just exists to help Joel, but she starts to get more important when Ellie shows up and lets you remember her more. She's the reason why Joel agreed to take Ellie to the Fireflies in the first place, so when she sacrifices herself after being bitten, it hits harder even though you as the player barely knew her. It makes you remember Tess more instead of just being a companion for the sake of being a companion. And then there's Henry. In my opinion, Henry is the best side character in the game. He shows up out of nowhere, and you start to realize this is the character that can actually help you and Ellie. Henry and Sam are both very similar to Joel and Ellie, and it can get you to gravitate towards them more. You start to understand how overprotective Henry is about Sam, but that he also needs to go into dangerous territory to get to a better area. It's the major conflict between Henry and Sam. And I think because of how easy it is to immediately enjoy Henry and Sam's company, it makes it so much worse when Henry betrays you and Sam doesn't really have a say in it. But Henry makes it up to Joel by saving him and Ellie, and Joel immediately forgives him. One of the best parts of the game is the sniper part. I mean, not really, because the sniper is complete bullshit, but once you fight off the infected and other people, you get to see a scene where Joel and Ellie were able to survive all of that shit with Henry and Sam. And you start to see Joel and Henry bonding, but Sam is just kind of distant. What I want to focus on is the part where Sam is talking about what it must be like being an infected. How the person might still be in there and how scary that is. Ellie says she doesn't believe in the people moving on, and as she walks out of the room, Sam reveals that he was bitten. So you, as the player right now, are realizing exactly what will happen, and that's why it sucks that you get to see it. When everyone wakes up, Sam chases Ellie upstairs and Joel is ready to kill Sam, but Henry doesn't let him. But Henry, this is kind of a tricky scenario, so someone has to do something, and Henry is the one to do something. He shoots Sam, and then this happens.
I'm gonna get that gun from you, okay? Oh, okay, easy.
It's your fault.
This is nobody's fault, Henry.
It's all your fault.
Henry, no.
The screen again fades to black, and you see Joel and Ellie walking to Tommy's with Joel saying, "I don't know what I'm feeling anymore." It's a lot to take in, but the game makes you realize you have to brush it off. That's a common thing that happens where if someone like Tess dies, not only does Joel have to shrug it off like it didn't happen so he can focus on getting Ellie to the Fireflies, but it also makes the player feel like they have to shrug it off too. I mean, that was a big scene that happened, but I have a game to play, and I don't want to focus on a character dying. It works so well since that death will just stay in the back of your mind, and it leads into one of the greatest aspects of the game. The Last of Us is a very linear game, so making choices is going to be essentially only in combat. You can't really influence the choices that characters make, and that can be either very cool or very frustrating. In The Last of Us, it works super well. Joel has to make so many choices in this game, and you have no say in what he does. So when he makes a choice like rejecting a family's cry for help, it makes you feel helpless, but it also makes you realize who Joel is. At his core, Joel is someone that doesn't trust anyone. He doesn't sympathize for anyone, and it makes him a ruthless piece of shit that I still somehow like. And I think the reason I like Joel is because of how his intentions are selfish ones, but they're usually the choices that have a good intention. Joel might ask for Bill's help, which can easily put Bill in danger, but it's for getting Ellie to the Fireflies. Joel might ask Tommy for help, which can potentially kill Tommy, but it's for making sure Ellie has a safer way to the Fireflies. Joel might relentlessly hurt and torture people to get information out of them, but it's for getting Ellie out of danger. And it's almost always going to be a choice that is for Ellie. The main time I remember where he doesn't choose in Ellie's favor is when he's trying to let Tommy take her. But he ends up realizing that this is wrong and he has her come with him. All these choices that Joel makes are already pretty big, but they're nothing when compared to the last choice he makes. At the end of the game, Joel and Ellie both get knocked unconscious, and they wake up in the hospital that's able to save the world. They can find out why Ellie is immune and develop a vaccine, but there's a catch. The part of Ellie that's immune is her brain, and the only way to get a vaccine is to remove the part that is immune. Essentially, it'll kill Ellie. And right at this moment, Joel has two options. Save Ellie, effectively destroying any hope for a vaccine, or let Ellie die and save the world from infected. But this is something that you as the player have no control over. It's Joel's decision, which is why it's so much more impactful when he chooses to save Ellie. And after slaughtering dozens of people, Joel runs to the room where they're about to perform surgery on Ellie. One guy is ready to defend his only chance of getting a vaccine and pulls a knife out, which doesn't do anything. This guy dies, and you take Ellie out of the room, and all of a sudden, things feel similar. The section where Joel is carrying Ellie out of the hospital is very similar to when he's carrying Sarah, only this time he has a chance to save Ellie. After making it to the elevator, Joel is only a couple feet away from escaping, but Marlene stops him. She tells the truth of what will happen if he gets away, and the truth is that Ellie would want this and the world wants this. The game cuts to a car, and you're sitting there wondering if Joel actually fucking gave Ellie up. But he didn't, and there's a brief flashback showing that Joel killed Marlene. He tells Ellie that there were more immune people, but the Fireflies stopped looking for a cure since it wasn't working out. The game leaves you off with simultaneously a limp dick ending and a Chad God ending. It's an ending where nothing extreme or heartfelt is happening. It's just a realistic conversation between Joel and Ellie, but eventually Ellie says,
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
and that's it. That okay from Ellie is such a weird ending since it's such an unexpected last line. It made me feel the same feeling I felt when I thought about the ending. Confused. The ending to The Last of Us makes you question if Joel did the right thing or not. At first, I felt like it might have been the wrong thing because Ellie would want this. She straight up says so in the second game with how her life would have actually meant something and how the world is still fucked now. But eventually, I realized that if everyone would stop fighting, then this wouldn't have ever happened. If everyone in The Last of Us was on the same side and trusted each other, then the infected would barely be a problem. And I realized that Joel made the right choice since Ellie getting sacrificed is wrong. That would also mean that Joel would lose his chance of being with someone that's almost like his daughter. And even if Ellie thinks that all of this was for nothing, it really wasn't, since Joel and Ellie's relationship was what came out of it. The ending has so many layers to it, and it's one of the best endings to any video game ever. And I'm really happy that The Last of Us team chose to make it interesting, rather than just another generic zombie story. Hey, it's actually me now. I just wanted to say thanks for watching the video. This was a lot. This took a lot of time, so I'd really appreciate if you give the video a like, maybe even a comment or subscribe, share even, and that's pretty much it. I would love to make more of these videos, but it does take a lot of fucking effort and energy and time, so hopefully I have more incentive to do that eventually. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you later. Bye.